Imagine finding an old British coin that looks almost ordinary, only to discover that someone is claiming it could be worth as much as $5 million. Sounds impossible, right? But this is exactly why old coins can be so fascinating. Today, we are looking at a 1954 British One Shilling featuring the young Queen Elizabeth II, a coin that has survived for more than 7 decades. But here is the real question. Is there something hidden in this coin that could make it extraordinarily valuable, or is the $5 million claim simply too good to be true? Stay with me until the end, because we are going to examine the date, design, history, rarity, condition, and the clues that collectors look for when deciding whether an old coin is truly special. Welcome back to $1 Million Coin. The coin we are examining today is a British One Shilling, dated 1954. It belongs to the early years of Queen Elizabeth II's reign and carries the young Queen's portrait on the obverse. On the reverse is the crowned English shield, surrounded by the traditional lettering and the denomination 1 shilling. This is not just an old piece of metal. It is a small surviving piece of Britain's monetary history. The first thing that immediately catches the eye is the date, 1954. That date places the coin in an important period of British history. Queen Elizabeth II had become monarch only a short time earlier, and coins carrying her new portrait were beginning to enter everyday circulation. The portrait was designed by Mary Gillick, whose work appeared on many of Elizabeth II's early British coins. The year 1954 also gives us a useful historical window. This was long before Britain changed to decimal currency. People were still thinking in pounds, shillings, and pence, and prices were written and spoken using a system that can seem unfamiliar today. A coin like this therefore connects 2 different eras, the early reign of Elizabeth II and the old British monetary system that existed before decimalization. For a modern viewer, the coin may seem small and simple, but imagine it when it was new. The surfaces would have been sharp, the lettering crisp, and the portrait clearly defined. It was not manufactured as a collectible curiosity. It was made to circulate and be used as money. That is an important difference between an ordinary historical coin and a coin originally produced as a special collector issue. Now let's talk about the word shilling. Before Britain's decimal currency system was introduced, the pound was divided into 20 shillings. That means a 1 shilling coin represented 1/20th of a pound. For people living in Britain during the 1950s, this was normal everyday money. It could be used in ordinary transactions, just like other circulating coins of the period. So this 1954 piece is part of a much larger story. It is not simply a coin from a random year. It represents the final decades of a monetary tradition that had already existed for centuries. When collectors hold one today, they are holding a physical reminder of a system that no longer exists in everyday British life. The 1954 shilling was made from cupronickel rather than precious silver. According to the Royal Mint specifications, the English shilling weighed about 5.66 grams and measured about 23.5 millimeters across. The reverse was designed by William Maving Gardner, while Mary Gillick created the obverse portrait. Turn the coin over, and the reverse design tells another part of the story. The crown shield represents England, with the 3 lions clearly visible. Around the design are the traditional inscriptions, while the date appears beside the shield. The words 1 shilling identify the denomination. But now we reach the most interesting question: how rare is this particular 1954 coin? The answer may surprise you. The 1954 English shilling had a recorded mintage of approximately 30.26 million pieces. That is a very large number compared with genuinely scarce British coins. This number is one of the most important facts in the entire investigation. More than 30 million examples means that the date itself is not enough to make the coin extraordinarily scarce. Many surviving examples can still be found in collections and among old accumulations of British coins. Rarity has to come from something beyond simply being old. There is also an important difference between mintage and survival. Mintage tells us how many were produced, while survival tells us how many remain today. Millions of coins may have been lost, damaged, melted, or simply discarded over the decades. Even so, a high original mintage usually makes it much harder for an ordinary example to become a major rarity. So simply being from 1954 does not automatically make this coin worth millions. In fact, Published reference values for ordinary examples are generally only a small amount, depending heavily on condition. One current reference lists examples from roughly a few cents in worn grades to a few dollars in uncirculated condition. And this is where the story becomes much more interesting. When collectors hear a claim like $5 million, they do not simply look at the date and say, "Yes, this must be valuable." They start asking questions. Is the coin a rare variety? Is there a genuine mint error? Was it struck using an unusual die? Is there documented historical provenance? Is it in an extraordinary state of preservation? And most importantly, has a recognized expert or auction house actually established such a value? Those questions matter because an old coin and a rare coin are not always the same thing. A coin can be more than 70 years old and still be relatively common. At the same time, a coin that looks almost identical to a common example can sometimes be worth much more if it contains a genuine and documented variety or error. This is why the tiny details matter. Collectors carefully examine the date, lettering, shield, edges, spacing, design elements, and overall strike. They compare those details with known examples. Even a small difference can sometimes indicate a different variety, but it must be properly verified before calling a coin rare. Condition is another major factor. There is a simple reason for this. Every time a circulating coin moved through a pocket, purse, shop, machine, or drawer, its surfaces were exposed to more chances for wear and damage. High points of the design usually show wear first. On a portrait coin, the highest parts of the portrait can become smooth. On the reverse, raised details of the shield and crown can lose definition. A coin that has survived with strong original detail is therefore more desirable than one that has been heavily worn. Collectors use standardized grading systems to describe these differences. The grade does not tell the entire story, but it gives buyers and sellers a common language for discussing condition. Imagine two coins from exactly the same year. One has been heavily circulated for decades, with worn lettering and damaged surfaces. The other has sharp details, clean surfaces, and very little evidence of circulation. They may have the same date, denomination, and design, but collectors can value them very differently. The coin shown here has visible signs of age and circulation, so its appearance alone does not support a $5 million valuation. But photographs cannot provide a professional authentication, and that is why serious claims require proper examination. There is another important point that many online coin videos leave out. A seller can place almost any price on a coin in an online listing, but an asking price is not the same as a confirmed selling price. A coin being advertised for $5 million does not mean someone actually paid $5 million for it. Real market evidence comes from documented transactions, recognized auction records, professional grading, and specialist research. This is the difference between a headline and a valuation. A headline might say that an old coin is worth millions. A real valuation asks, what coin is it? What grade is it? Is the variety confirmed? And what have comparable examples actually sold for? Without those answers, a huge number should be treated cautiously. But when we hear the claim that a 1954 1 shilling could be worth $5 million, we should treat that number as a claim that needs evidence, not as an established fact. And that does not make the coin boring. Actually, it makes the investigation more exciting, because the real story of this coin is not just about a giant number. It is about what happened to an ordinary piece of British money after it left the mint. Imagine this coin entering circulation in 1954. It could have passed through shops, pockets, cash registers, markets, and homes. It could have been carried by people who never imagined that decades later someone would be holding it and asking questions about its history. That is what makes collecting old coins so fascinating. Every coin has a journey. The 1954 shilling also belongs to a period when Britain was still using its traditional pre-decimal currency system. Decimalization would not arrive until 1971. So this little coin represents a monetary system that has completely disappeared from everyday British life. There were also different 1954 shilling varieties, including English and Scottish reverse designs. The English version has the crowned English shield, while the Scottish version carries a different shield design. Reference sources list separate mintages for these varieties. The published figures show about 30,262,000 pieces for the 1954 English version and about 26,771,700 for the Scottish version. Those numbers reinforce an important point. Even when two coins share the same denomination and year, the reverse design can identify a different type with its own production history. That means identifying the reverse correctly is important. Looking at the coin shown in our video, the crowned shield with the three lions points toward the English reverse type. Now let's return to that $5 million question. Could a normal 1954 1 shilling suddenly be worth $5 million? Based on the published reference information available for the standard issue, there is no evidence that an ordinary circulated 1954 English shilling is a $5 million coin. Current references place normal examples dramatically lower. But could a completely extraordinary example be worth significantly more than a normal coin? Potentially, yes, if there were a genuinely rare, authenticated feature that transformed it into a major numismatic rarity. That is the key distinction. The valuable part would not simply be the number 1954, it would have to be something unusual about the actual coin. There is another reason this particular coin deserves a closer look: the story behind the design. British coins were not created randomly. Every portrait, shield, inscription and symbol was chosen to communicate something about the country and its monarchy. When you look closely at the 1954 shilling, you are looking at a design language that Britain had used for generations, but now with a young Queen Elizabeth II appearing on the obverse. The portrait itself is especially interesting because Elizabeth II was still the beginning of her reign. For collectors, early reign coins can be fascinating because they mark a transition between different periods of British coinage. The coin is therefore valuable as a historical object even when its ordinary monetary value is modest. Its age, design, and connection to a major period in British history give it a story that cannot be measured simply by the number printed on a price guide. Another thing collectors consider is authenticity. A genuine old coin should show a consistent relationship between its design, weight, dimensions, metal, and surfaces. If someone claims that a common coin is worth an extraordinary amount, specialists will want to inspect all of those characteristics. They may compare it with reference examples, examine the lettering under magnification, check the edge, weigh the coin accurately, and look for evidence of alteration or damage. This is particularly important with dramatic online valuations. A photograph can make a coin look unusual because of lighting, shadows, scratches, camera angle, or surface discoloration. What appears to be an error on a screen may simply be normal wear when examined in person. That is why a serious collector never bases $1 million decision on a single photograph. There is also a difference between a coin being interesting and a coin being rare. This 1954 shilling is interesting because it connects us to early Elizabeth II coinage and Britain's pre-decimal currency. Rarity, however, requires stronger evidence. If thousands or millions of similar examples are known, the date alone cannot create an extraordinary value. A genuine rarity needs a specific reason that separates it from the ordinary examples, and that brings us back to the coin in our video. The photographs show a recognizable British 1 shilling with the early Elizabeth II portrait and English reverse. Nothing visible in these images is enough, by itself, to prove a $5 million error. That does not mean the coin has no collector interest. It simply means the extraordinary claim needs extraordinary proof. If this coin were being submitted to a professional, the first step would be identification. The specialist would confirm the denomination, date, reverse type, metal, and basic specifications. The next step would be condition assessment. After that, the specialist could investigate whether any unusual variety or error is actually present. Only after those questions are answered would it make sense to discuss a serious market valuation. This process may sound slow, but that is exactly what protects collectors from mistakes. A coin can look spectacular and still be common. Another coin can look ordinary and contain a feature that makes it much more interesting. The difference is found through careful comparison, not through a dramatic price printed in a thumbnail. So if you own a 1954 shilling, do not throw it away simply because a price guide shows a low value. Its historical story still makes it worth keeping for a collector. At the same time, do not assume that every 1954 shilling is a hidden $5 million treasure. The smart approach is to identify it correctly, preserve it, research it, and verify anything unusual. That could mean a confirmed mint error, an extremely rare variety, exceptional preservation, or important documented history. But without that evidence, we should never present a huge valuation as guaranteed. And this is an important lesson for anyone who collects coins. Never clean an old coin just because it looks dirty. Cleaning can damage the original surface and potentially reduce collector appeal. Instead, preserve the coin as you found it and have it examined if you believe it may be unusual. Also, never judge a coin's value from a single online photograph or a dramatic video title. Compare reliable references, look for actual sales evidence, and when the stakes are high, get professional authentication. So after examining the 1954 one shilling, what is our final verdict? It is unquestionably an interesting piece of British history. It carries the early Queen Elizabeth II portrait, features the English shield on the reverse, was struck in cupronickel, and comes from a fascinating period before Britain's decimal currency. But the $5 million figure should not be treated as the confirmed market value of a normal 1954 shilling. The documented information available for ordinary examples points to values that are vastly lower. For perspective, Numismatics currently lists the 1954 English shilling with a mintage of 30,262,000 and indicative values ranging from about 17 cents in good condition to about $2.30 in uncirculated condition. These are reference figures, not guaranteed sale prices, but they clearly show how far an ordinary example is from a $5 million valuation. The Royal Mint's own specifications also confirm that the 1954 English shilling was a circulating cupronickel coin weighing 5.66 grams and measuring 23.5 millimeters. That gives us a reliable baseline for identifying the type, and that may actually be the most important discovery of all. Sometimes the biggest mystery surrounding an old coin is not whether it is worth millions. The real mystery is understanding what the coin actually is, how rare it really is, and whether there is something unusual hiding in its smallest details. So before you throw an old British coin into a drawer, take another look, check the date, check the design, check the lettering, check the edge, and most importantly, check the facts. Because somewhere among millions of ordinary coins, genuinely rare pieces can still exist, and you will never know what you have until you look closely. If you enjoyed this investigation, make sure you subscribe to $1 Million Coin for more old coins, hidden varieties, historical discoveries, and surprising numismatic stories. And remember, an old coin may look ordinary in your hand, but sometimes its story is worth far more than its face value. Thanks for watching $1 Million Coin. Subscribe for more old coin discoveries, and keep checking those coins. You never know what history might be sitting in your collection.